Good evening, class. This is Professor Holbrook. We're talking tonight about Part 2 of Chapter 18 of Social Science, International Political Relations. So we'll begin where we left off in our discussion of power in the world community. Power is the capacity to compel another party to commit actions contrary to its explicitly stated will. It's a key determinant of foreign policy success. It has many dimensions: military, economic, moral, geographic, and political. Military power equals hard power, that is, coercion, force. Soft power is moral influence. Hegemonic power is another kind of power. A hegemon is a country with almost indisputable power. During the second half of the 20th century, the world was divided between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, the United States has been the world hegemon, particularly since the beginning of the 21st century. The United States was held in high esteem and confidence among the world nations during and after World War II, due to its role in that war. After the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal in the 1970s, the confidence in the United States gradually eroded throughout the 1980s. And 9/11, the attack of the World Trade Centers, the U.S. briefly regained world favor. One of the factors was the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War began a decline in U.S. moral influence around 1975. The war itself lasted for almost 20 years. It was a Cold War proxy war. That is to say, it was really a war between the Soviet Union and the United States, but fought out in the ground of Vietnam. The Vietnam War was the first war to be televised directly into people's homes. Here is a famous photo of a South Vietnamese general executing a Viet Cong prisoner during the Tet Offensive. This went into the homes of Americans, and they were appalled by it. Here's another famous picture of some children running after being burned with napalm that was broadcast into American homes and created a sense of horror about the war. And here's some other close-up pictures of these same children who were burned. This one little girl in particular caught the imagination of the American people. She later on came to the United States and wrote a book about her story. NATO is a international organization called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It was created after World War II as a continuing counterbalance against the Soviet Union and its sphere of influence. It includes such nations as Canada, Great Britain, Iceland, Italy. Some of the original members also included Norway. Turkey is a member of the United Kingdom. Spain is a member. A number of former allies of the Soviet Union, such as Albania, have also joined NATO. Estonia and where else? Estonia was a former, and the Czech Republic were parts of the Soviet Union before, or were in the sphere of influence of the Soviet Union before its breakup. Foreign policy is an important part of the exercise of international diplomacy. Courses of action a nation uses to achieve international objectives. It increases security, it increases general economic welfare, and it promotes political interests. Some of the considerations of foreign policy include defensibility of boundaries, effects of distance on the powers of offense and defense, availability of ports for useful trade and naval bases, attitude, size, and power of neighboring states, and the state's own size and natural resources. Some foreign policy ideologies include fascism, which was especially predominant before and during World War II with Germany and Italy. In fascism, a natural leader will emerge. All power is held by a small group of leaders. Usually they overlook the rights of individuals and minorities. Adolf Hitler and Mussolini were examples of fascists in World War II. However, fascism is declining worldwide. Another ideology includes democratic capitalism. People make decisions through democratic government. Of course, that's the situation that we have here in the United States and also in Great Britain. Basic inalienable rights are spelled out in the Constitution. All leaders are subservient to law. It's the most dominant global ideology today. Another ideology is communism, which is still current but is diminishing. It was established originally to protect the rights of workers, but small groups of leaders make all decisions. Leaders above people's will and above the law. Less emphasis on rights, private property law. The ideology is currently in transition in modern China, North Korea, Venezuela, and Cuba. U.S. foreign policy is usually directed by our president. He is generally responsible for it. He controls most of the diplomatic functions. He's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, but only Congress can officially declare war. In the 19th century, the U.S. foreign policy was isolationist. George Washington, the first president of the United States, once warned in a speech that the United States should avoid entangling alliances. The Pearl Harbor attack in 1941, a surprise attack by the Japanese against the United States, led to a radical break from isolationism and the beginnings of internationalism. After the World War II, the United States had increased alliances, increased military presence worldwide, and was actively protecting capitalism and democracy. The Truman Doctrine was a doctrine of nuclear strike, and the Cold War was a war that was a kind of a stalemate between the Soviet Union and the United States. The Truman Doctrine said that all peoples had the right to self-determination. A foreign policy timeline from 1789 to 1897, isolationism and unilateralism prevailed. In 1796, Washington's farewell address, he said to beware of entangling alliances with Europe. In 1834, the Monroe Doctrine set out a demand by the United States that Europe do not interfere in Latin America, and in exchange, the U.S. promised not to interfere in Europe. Since 1968, new nation-states have sprung into being and some old ones have died out. This change occurred in the Western Hemisphere. And so that is the conclusion of our Part 2 of International Political Relations in Hunt and Colander. Thank you.